Everyone's saying it. The world is crazy right now. A lone wolf massacres innocents on a seafront in Nice. Hundreds die in an aborted coup in Turkey. Shootings in the US, and that's only in the past week. Everyone's feeling it. There's something horrible in the air this year. As we go into the Olympics, the joy and pride and spirit of London 2012 seems far away and long ago. Instead of moaning, why is everything so awful and I've done it, try this. Regard terrorist atrocities, such as the one by an apparently self-radicalised loon in Nice, or mass shootings by yet more nutjobs in the US, as random catastrophes. They're like plane crashes. It's a waste of time worrying about them. No government can prevent them. They're not failures of leadership. They're accidents of nature. And next, stop going online and freaking out. Twitter won't stop terrorism, tweeps. If Churchill saw us now, he would be turning in his grave at our pathetic reaction to events. Let's not allow it to be the summer of hate. Keep buggering on, everyone, as Winston would say.
Well, I sincerely hope I've misunderstood you, because are you actually suggesting that with a series of random shootings of innocent police officers in the US, we just ignore it and carry on?
No, and what I'm saying is
carry on.
We've got to be more selective about what we worry about. We cannot predict, and no government can stop, the sort of random lone wolf act of violence. There's always going to be crazy nutters out there.
Hang on a second. Are you honestly suggesting, after those 84 people were killed when they were mown down by some mad bloke on in a truck on Nice, we just sort
of...
84 people died in Nice, and on we go, and here's the weather.
I'm afraid... I'm not saying we don't worry about it or we don't mourn them and grieve for 84 lives lost by some religious hitman. But this is not something that governments can necessarily do very much about. And I think what I'm saying is, because of rolling news and because everybody's a citizen journalist and there's so much content out there, we're living in a 24-hour culture that's saturated with bad news at the moment. Right. And I think it's making everybody anxious and unnecessarily gloomy and fretful.
I'm not gloomy.
And I'm saying, let's tune it out. Let's try and sort out what things that we can worry about with
Rachel,
legitimacy and with purpose, and things that we can't control.
But don't you think the anxiety is caused by the catastrophes and not the other way around? We are all on edge.
I'm not saying our anxiety causes plane crashes. No, I'm saying that we can't... There's no point in getting on a plane and spending the whole time worrying about it crashing.
Do you know what? That's a really dumb example, Rachel Johnson, because tragically, just over a year ago it was, a pilot for an airline decided to fly the plane.
He was a kamikaze. This is exactly my point.
As a result of that, every airline in the Western world, I don't know about the whole world, and in the US, now has a situation where one pilot is not allowed to stay in the cockpit all the time. There are different disciplines, his or her own, to make sure that Emma's here. The pilot is not to stay under his or her own, and there has to be a change of personnel. You do that as a result of what's happened. Governments impose anti-terror legislation, or whatever it might be, as a result of what's happened in Nice. Clearly, the pedestrianisation of that area did not work. So the next time they have fetes or parties, whatever you want to call them, they will lock down that area.
It's going to be like the American embassy.
You have to learn from these things. This idea, we can't do anything about it. Well, let's all just have 9/11.
Sorry, Nick, can I
come on, Nick.
Rachel, I agree with Nick.
Okay. I don't agree with Nick. You really think that because we had 9/11, now we all have to take off our belts and shoes every single time we go through?
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
Rachel,
I don't.
You're doing yourself a disservice in your arguments, because I understand what you're saying to a point. I do agree that governments and people in charge react to things and modify the way that we behave to try and protect against. Hence why you saw people in France who've been subject to some of the most brutal attacks in a short space of time, screaming murderer at their elected officials because they want more done. But put that to one side for just one moment. What I understand to be the case, I've just been off, that's why I've not been on this programme for 3 weeks, I've been away.
There are other reasons, by the way.
Whatever, you've been told different things to me then. And while we were away, my husband has several news apps on his phone, and they all do a breaking news alert sound, and he's become a one-man news machine. Yeah. Right? I was the one who went into news, and now he will say to me, "Did you hear?"
And is he in a state of nervous tension and anxiety?
He's not in a state
of living with her.
He's not. Yeah, I'll accept that. No,
so
but
the press have got a big part in all this.
What I'm trying to say is, when the internet went as it went with news. And news went global, and also news went 24-hour. And I say this sitting on a 24-hour news station. The irony has not escaped me. We went into a situation where I thought I'd get a larger spread of news from a larger spread of places, and actually the news agenda would become much more fragmented, and people like us would have to pick from a much larger menu about what we spoke about. But something interesting has shifted. We've gone to one story agenda. In the last few years, something will come out as breaking news, and then it will dominate in a way that feels more pervasive for 24 hours because it's on your phone, it's on Twitter, it's on Facebook, it's on the radio.
And it moves faster.
And it stays with you. But also news moves slower because it goes incrementally.
But can I just go back to
something? It moves faster, I'm saying, because of social media and everything else.
So I think it's your false illusion that you're in it the whole time.
OK, yeah, so we live in the 24-hour news cycle, but before... Michelle, I just want to say something about what you said.
Go on.
We should have protection. The public should be protected. Now, look, if you just look at Nice, this was one guy in a lorry who was ploughing into a crowd. Now, we're always going to want to have crowds of people. So are we now saying that just in case one lunatic decides to get into a car and plough into a crowd of people, we have to protect the crowd of people from that eventuality?
I think
that is absolutely...
Rachel, when there's big events like that, sadly, we're going to have to do that.
Life is a series of risks.
It's very interesting. We are speaking on the day. I can do this in a sentence. Europol has just published today, as we speak, the number of terrorist attacks that have happened on mainland Europe and the number that have been foiled. Both are at a record high over the last 5 years. That foiling, I would argue, is because the lessons have been learned, but they are able to take what goes wrong and act against it.
OK, so for me, I completely disagree with you. I think the days that we stop getting anxious and affected by these acts will be a very, very sad day, because let me tell you now, I am addicted to the news. But I'm absolutely addicted to the news. I have it on. You'd hate to live with me. It is relentless in my house. But what happens with me is when there is a mass shooting in the States, it doesn't even come onto my radar because to me it's become commonplace. It just is what it is. It's what they do. Of course they're sad and of course they're tragic, but there's seemingly one every other day in America. Now, when something tragic happens, like your niece and all the rest of it, it stops me in my tracks. It makes me feel anxious. It makes me feel sad. It makes me feel afraid, and I am completely comfortable with that. I want to feel those emotions. It makes me feel empathetic.
But don't you see a terror attack in Nice? Is a terror attack in Tunisia? Is a terror attack in London?
I wouldn't even call it a terror attack. It was a lunatic.
It would appear he was inspired.
It's not even just about a terror attack. I'm talking about any tragedy. When something tragic happens, I want to feel those emotions to it, and I actually feel bad.
But don't you think a mass shooting in America is tragic?
No, of course it's tragic, but what I'm saying is it's lost that for me because they happen all the time. All the time. It doesn't penetrate and have that same effect on me anymore.
Well, what I would say is, if we all feel that and we all go about our business differently because one person has perpetrated an act of such horror, I think he's won and we've lost. Anyway, it's what they want. And, ISIS now designs its atrocities to get maximum media attention and in order to cause maximum anxiety in the West.
It's called the death of 1,000 cuts policy, isn't it? Because they can't, thank the Lord, it doesn't look like they can do a 9/11. It doesn't look like they can do a 7th of July in London. It doesn't look like they... So what they do are these fairly... And totally impossible to guard against. How do you guard against a guy with a truck or a minibus or an SUV? So this will continue, because this is the only way the terrorists...
we have to accept it. Now we've got to move on. Because now it's time for the First Ladies.